shouldn't I be? Every woman in the world, we all live in fear. It's become our natural state.
Americans in the 1950s were afraid that the way of life they had worked so hard to create would be destroyed by the looming threat of communism. Communism represented everything that Americans feared, a society where the people had no say and were not allowed to have possessions or believe in a god. The threat of communism seemed very real to the American public. As Senator McCarthy was hunting for communists in the government, Soviet spies had been caught, and the Soviet Union's might grew as they developed the hydrogen bomb and sent satellites into space. Americans in their fear turned to protect themselves. Bomb shelters were built in backyards and basements across the country. 1 in 20 households had some kind of shelter installed. Schools implemented bomb drills, where children would duck under their desks to protect themselves in case of an atomic bomb attack. The fear of a communist attack was on everyone's mind. To help ease their fears, Americans turned to the movies. One genre of film that was especially popular was science fiction. Science fiction films of the 1950s drew from the fears that were relevant in society to attract audiences. The audiences, in return, used the films to help ease the pressure they felt. This exchange between the films and the American public still affects American culture to this day. One film that drew upon fears of a communist invasion was 1955's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The story focuses on Dr. Bennell, who, upon returning home from a trip, hears numerous stories about how people's family members seem to be different.
Upsets him, it's my daughter-in-law. He's got the crazy idea she isn't his mother.
She isn't. Don't let her get me.
It turns out that they are being replaced by clones formed in pods that came from outer space. The pod people are exactly like the people that they imitate, except for that the pod people have no emotions.
You can't love or be loved, am I right? You say it as if it were terrible. Believe me, it isn't. You've been in love before. It didn't last. It never does. Love, desire, ambition, faith. Without them, life's so simple, believe me.
Eventually, the whole town becomes taken over by the pod people, leaving only Dr. Bennell and his girlfriend Becky, who attempt to escape from the town after learning that the pods are being spread throughout the state. In the end, Dr. Bennell escapes to the freeway, where his cries are ignored and he is taken for insane.
Pull over to the side of the road. I need your help. Something terrible has happened.
Go on, you drunk. Get out of the street. Get out of here. Go on.
No one believes his story until a truck filled with the pods is found in an accident. The story ends with hope for the future. Invasion of the Body Snatchers is an excellent example of a film with references to a communist invasion, because of the way the aliens are portrayed as having no compassion and being ruthless automatons, common stereotypes of communists. Another film which uses the same device to convey the idea of a communist invasion is the 1958 film I Married a Monster from Outer Space. In this film, aliens come to Earth to take over the bodies of young men and impregnate their wives in order to ensure the survival of their kind. Newlywed Marge Farrell notices that ever since the wedding, her husband seems stony and distant. He no longer drinks alcohol, swims, and is now cruel to animals.
I said, quiet, boy.
Eventually, she finds out that he is an alien, and that almost all the other men in town are as well. Marge tries to seek outside help, but is thwarted at every attempt she makes.
How much?
FBI.
How much?
$1.60.
Will it go out right away?
Right away.
Marge, do you want to spend the rest of your life in an insane asylum?
I'm not insane.
I don't think you are. If you go around talking about monsters invading Norrisville, everyone else will.
She soon gathers a force of men she knows are not aliens, and they attack the alien spaceship, rid them from the planet, and in the end, everything returns to normal. The communist undertones of I Married a Monster from Outer Space are very similar to that of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The main difference is that the aliens in I Married a Monster from Outer Space are more vicious and have no qualms with killing to protect their cause. Another film that shows an invasion of ruthless communist-like aliens who are willing to kill anything in their path is the 1953 film War of the Worlds. War of the Worlds, based on the H.G. Wells story, tells of a flying saucer that lands in New Jersey. At first it seems peaceful, but quickly it becomes hostile and devastates anything that comes near it. The world is soon overrun by invaders, and nothing seems to have any effect on them. Things seem pretty bad for everyone. Whole cities are being destroyed. Destruction rains down all over the earth. But all of a sudden, the flying saucers simply fall to the ground, and the creatures inside perish.
Something's happening to them.
At the end of the film, the narrator announces that the invaders were crushed by germs in our air. War of the Worlds is a perfect example of the fear of invasion by a seemingly invincible force that could not be negotiated with. That vision struck right to the heart of American fears, as such a force could be compared to the power of nuclear weapons, a very real fear to Americans in the 1950s. Another movie where mass destruction of the Earth is threatened is 1958's Brain from Planet Eros. In The Brain from Planet Eros, a scientist, Steve Marsh, encounters a brain from outer space that kills his assistant and takes over his mind. The alien brain turns out to be a violent fugitive from his home planet. Another brain, acting as a police force, takes over the mind of Steve Marsh's trusted dog in order to stop the evil brain from turning all of humanity into nuclear weapon-producing slaves. In the end, Steve Marsh catches the evil brain off guard and attacks its weak spot, killing it.
You will be dictator of the world in spite of yourself.
Brain from Planet Eros not only plays on the fear of impending destruction of the Earth, but also on the possibility of enslavement, which can be compared to a communist takeover, and also the fear of a communist invasion from within society, as cultivated by the communist witch hunt and the Rosenbergs. Science fiction films of the 1950s scared audiences by incorporating what they feared in their everyday lives. This exchange can still be seen today, as today's world seems a whole lot like the 1950s, with mass fear of terrorism and nuclear threats part of everyday life. Science fiction films of today highly resemble those of the 1950s. One example is the 1996 film Independence Day, which features an alien invasion very similar to that of War of the Worlds.
Hey.
So while science fiction in the 1950s was dictated by the fears of society, so are films today, and probably as long as people have fears, they will appear through popular culture.